Extreme haunted houses are very real and very controversial. This is the next level of scares for the jaded haunted house junkie, the type of person that thrives on the thrill of fear. Let's face it, haunted houses are very limited in what they can do. No matter how scary it may get deep down, you know that no one is going to touch you or hurt you, and all of this is just for fun. Safe, harmless, spooky fun. Extreme haunts lose that aspect of fun. They lose it by making every participant sign an extensive waiver, giving them the legal permission to touch you, hurt you, hypnotize you, psychologically torture you, actually torture you, and even bury you alive. The goal of the extreme haunted house is to turn that fun, harmless fear you normally get into a knife, and to use that knife to peel your nerves and your sanity down to the quick, to make you question if it's real or not. What fascinates me about the extreme haunts on a personal level is not why people go to them, but why people work for them. You're going to an extreme haunt. Some people may be curious, or they want to test their mental strength under extreme situations, or maybe they lost a dare. Maybe they just don't believe it's going to be that scary. But the haunters, these people are very literally getting paid to mentally dismantle people, to push them as hard as possible until they break. This seems like a crazy job. Literally, like a job only fit for a crazy person, or a sadist, or something even worse. In late October of 2016, there was a flurry of online fanfare about a pop-up extreme haunt that was setting up inside a notoriously real haunted house. As the stories go, some years ago, this very same house had been used for something similar. And that night, 6 people disappeared. It became an urban legend called the Lost Haunt. This new iteration of an old idea billed itself as the most extreme haunt allowed by law, the scariest haunt ever open to the public. It was only lasting a few nights. It was incredibly exclusive. And if you could navigate to the right black market on the dark web, tickets were quite expensive. They vowed that it would be the most terrifying night of your life, and that it might even be the last. It was called the Ghastly House of Horrors. Drinking whiskey in the kitchen and telling scary stories around the fire. Music, monsters, and mayhem, killers, cannibals, and cults, fearful fiction and furious fact, tall tales, and terrible truths. This is a scary home companion. Tommy, Arthur, and David had at one time been the very best of friends in all regards. People drift apart, as they tend to do, and the same thing happened with this happy triumvirate. They never lost touch, not entirely, And mostly that was for one reason: the October haunts. The three had bonded over Halloween back in high school, and what started out as escapist fun turned into an annual tradition. Every October, they would drive however long it took to get to as many haunts as they possibly could. By the time 2016 rolled around, they were all comfortably into their 30s, but they still clung to the October tour of haunts as a tradition. It wasn't as extensive a tradition these days, mind you, but they still took enough time to hit at least a few haunted houses every year. They all still loved the haunts, but David had taken his love and really run with it. The bulk of all the pictures and reviews and essays that he had collected over the years served as the backbone for his grad school thesis, The Evolution of Haunted Houses in American Culture. Arthur was the one of the three who might have loved haunts more than anyone. But something had happened over the years, and he'd turned into, for lack of a better term, a haunt snob. It seemed like he went to houses just to critique them, and he'd been edging more and more into the dark web, creepy shit that blurred the line between fun and fear. Arthur was kind of a dick, but he always knew about the best new haunts. And then there was Tommy, Fearless Tom, the unscarable. These days, his formerly athletic body was a little more middle-aged, but he still had this unflappable dude bro energy around him. It was hard not to have a good time when you were with Tommy. It was just past 9 p.m. on Halloween night, and the three men were going to their third and final haunt for the season. Because of their heightened curiosity about this haunt and all the hype about it online, they had all decided to sneak their phones in and record the experience. What follows are selected outtakes from the audio they were able to record that night.
So I'm the one who paid, and I'm not going to ask you to pay me back if you guys make it through.
Well, isn't there a money-back guarantee?
Well, yeah.
If I remember correctly, anyone who still retains enough vim, vigor, and sanity to ask for a refund will be giving one, no questions asked.
Yeah, it did say that. Exactly.
All right, so I get the money back either way. I'll get it back if by some miracle you lightweights turn out to be actual men. Otherwise, you fucking owe me.
Did you watch the testimonial videos? They look sick.
No kidding. This girl looks... Jesus, should I be nervous?
No, everyone agrees they don't touch you, okay? This isn't like a torture thing. It's just that scary.
No, listen to this.
What?
This one's the scariest one yet. Listen.
God damn it.
Fuck.
Extreme haunted houses have built their reputation on going too far, or at the very least, walking with a toe over the line. But this house was different. There was no waiver to sign, because, so they said, no harm would come to anyone. They were not going to threaten you with violence or engage in hypnotic suggestion techniques. There was no non-disclosure agreement to sign because, so they said, they were sure that no one would believe what you saw anyway. And finally, there was no physical or psychological screening required because, so they said, All you had to do was be fit enough to enter the house and look around. This haunt was called extreme because of the content of the rooms they had designed. They were so scary that no other word could cover it. The 2-lane highway turned into 1 lane, and then pavement turned into dirt. The trees ate up the moonlight, leaving the ground bottomless black. Arthur put on the brights, and they all stared out the windows, looking for the landmark they had been told about. There it was. A small side road that led deeper into the thicket, and it was marked, as promised, with a bright red handprint on the side of a tree. 10 more minutes of winding dirt track, and they finally saw a flicker of light through the woods. A house came into view, with 10 or 15 cars parked in a neat little row along the side of the road in front of it. In the back seat, David got a little bit worked up at the sight of this house.
Dude!
Jesus, man. Chill out. You having a stroke or something?
Shut up, Arthur. This is the Lost Haunt.
Wait, what are you talking about? I don't even know what that is.
It's only like the holy grail of haunted houses. I know you've heard us talking about it.
Wait, the serial killer house? The for real haunted house? They say a bunch of people disappeared there or something.
6 people. Yeah, this is it.
Yeah, but how can you be sure?
Because I'm looking right at it. I've studied the pics of the place a million times.
Oh, that's creepy, I'll give you that.
Every shithole house in the woods probably looks like this. It's definitely a nice touch, though. Wait, are you lighting up in my car?
Oh, very much no.
No, dude, I'm telling you, this is the place.
The Lost Haunt is pretty infamous in the local area. It's somewhat well known in other parts of Pennsylvania. Otherwise, it's just an old wives' tale that floats around the websites and message boards for the hardcore haunt freaks. And the story goes, on Halloween night of 1996, the nearest town to this particular stretch of woods was called Skunk Hollow. And the week before Halloween, Skunk Hollow got covered with flyers. There was a map, there was a picture of the house, and a brief description. The most haunted house in Pennsylvania was being turned into a Halloween spooktacular for one night only. The next morning, the authorities went in to try and figure out what happened. They had 6 missing people. They had 22 more in the hospital with various minor injuries, plus 1 young man who didn't appear injured but was inexplicably catatonic. What the cops didn't have was a cohesive story, an explanation, or a reason. None of the survivors could agree on anything, not even which house it had been. Cops searched the property of the house on the flyer, but found no evidence of wrongdoing. David knew that story front to back, and he had studied a picture of that house hundreds of times. This was the place. It seemed that the Lost Haunt was open for business one more time. Arthur parked at the end of the row of cars, and the three of them walked to the dimly lit front of the house. There were a few lanterns across the porch, but no electric lights visible. A cluster of people had gathered in front of this porch, waiting patiently and quietly, but tittering with excitement. When the boys joined the back of the group, they made 18 patrons. The exact number of tickets the site had said was available. With everyone present, the front door squeaked open dramatically, and 3 women slowly emerged and took positions across the front of the porch. The first was hidden under a dark black robe and a long black veil. The second wore a blood-spattered smock over a skimpy and far too revealing baby doll nightie. The third was hidden under a hood, but when she pulled it back, it revealed a hideous split mouth. Sure, it was a makeup effect, but it was a damn good one. And then the host stepped into view, the master of ceremonies, long and gaunt and impossibly thin, because he had no arms. More accurately, his arms were tucked inside of his shirt and coat. His shoulders had been smeared with red paint, where the arms had supposedly been torn away. And he had a series of very realistic fake human hands attached all over him, as if he was being swarmed. "Welcome to the Ghastly House of Horrors," he said, in a somewhat high-pitched voice. "You are a select few, because this is a very select experience. We will proceed with 3 groups of 6, and I see no reason to wait a moment longer." The armless man ushered the closest 6 people up onto the porch, where they followed the woman with the split mouth into the house. Tommy was just about to peel away from the group and finish lighting up this fatty, but then the hand collector started telling a story, and he found himself captivated. It was about a painting, an accursed painting that had been made in the basement of this very house. It said that the barrier between our world and hell is thinnest down there. It's also said that the artist had a little piece of the devil's flesh that he ground into his paints. Some years later, that same artist returned. Only this time he created art out of human suffering. He'd been arrested right here in this house, in this basement. No one knew for sure what happened to the painting. There are stories, of course. As he talked, time just flew, and the second group was already going inside, following the long black veil.
Look at her. Is she missing a hand?
Yeah, dude. Don't be a dick about it.
I thought it was an effect like that split mouth thing.
That was good makeup, I'll admit. Very convincing.
This hunt can't be very long, though. I mean, the groups of people are going in like really fast.
Maybe they're just staggered. No one's coming out.
You go in, but you don't come out.
You joke, Tommy, but seriously, this would be a great way to kill a bunch of people. No one knows how to find us. There's no cell service. We're kind of on our own.
Well, that's the entire purpose behind these extreme haunts, isn't it? They blur the line and make it seem like maybe it could be real. It's brilliant.
The master of ceremonies continued speaking. I imagine some of you have heard of Sarah Whitlow. Sarah the Skinner, who turned her husband into a suit. She was captured in 1988, but for some months previous to that, she lived here, in the basement of this house. She said that she could hear singing through the wall. A chorus of screams, she called it. Sarah would hunt and catch small animals in the woods and then skin them alive down there next to the wall. She said that it made the singing clearer and louder. This house has long held a siren song for the damned. Another killer, called the Harrowspecks, briefly called this place home, and in the baby doll with one hand approached him and whispered into his ear, and he nodded. It seems your time has come. Shall we enter the house of horrors? The last remaining eager customers all lined up. The other three were all young ladies, and so Tommy, Arthur, and David let them go first. They all followed the baby doll across the porch and into the house. As they passed, the armless host wished them the best of luck and said, "Your tour ends in the basement. I'll see you there." Inside, the house was dark. Far too dark to see much beyond the person in front of you. So everyone stayed bunched up. They inched down a short hallway and then up a rickety wooden staircase. There were no traditional spooky haunted house lights or decorations in here. It was just a very old house. One that groaned and creaked with every step that the group made. They were halfway up the staircase when there came a loud clatter from below. A door on the first floor flew open, and what appeared to be a blood-soaked teenage boy started to crawl out. Arthur was last in line, which meant he was lowest on the staircase, so he had the best viewpoint. But it being so dark, all he saw was shapes and movement. The boy crawled a few feet before someone darted from the doorway and grabbed him by the ankle. He was dragged back through the door and down the basement steps. The door slammed shut. As jaded as he was, even Arthur had to admit it was pretty goddamn scary. They continued to the second floor and followed the baby doll to the last door on the left, where she addressed them in a whispered voice. "Welcome to the Hall of the Mirror Man. He waits for you on the other side of the glass, and what sights he has. Please do not touch the glass, or he might just pull you through." She opened the door, stood aside, and they all shuffled in, everyone taking little baby steps into the dark unknown. She closed the door from the outside and waited. The 6 guests fanned out as much as they could in such a small room. It was only 12 by 12. No furniture, completely empty, no lights, nothing but floor-to-ceiling mirrors, covering the walls, covering the mirrors, even the back of the door. And then ever so gradually, light. A dirty, gray, ambient light that seemed to be coming from all around them, everywhere at once, from the other side of these mirrors. Instinctively, everyone turned and started looking in different directions. They saw only themselves, backlit in that ugly gray. One of the young women walked up to one of the mirrors and touched it. "Ooh, it's warm," she giggled. And then she winced. "Ah, shit, it's cracked." She sucked the blood from her fingertip. Up close, she saw that the mirrors had been nailed directly into the walls. Little spider webs of cracks radiated out in patches throughout the room. And this particular little spider web sucked up her blood. Suddenly, Tommy blurted out, "Hey, look!" He pointed, and everyone followed his gaze to the far corner, where it appeared that a man was approaching. He was small, distant, but growing closer, ever closer to the far side of the mirror. All 6 of them clustered in again, getting closer to the corner as the man finally approached. It was close enough for them to see. He looked like a human pincushion with thousands of glittering little thin shards and needles of mirror and glass poking out through his skin. He got close enough that he could touch the mirror from the other side. Running his ruined fingertips along the glass, he started to pace around the outside of the room, moving fluidly from mirror to mirror to mirror. No one said a word. No one breathed. The mirror man stopped and looked at one particular spider web of cracks. He sniffed it, and then he extended a shredded tongue and lapped up a droplet of the girl's blood. He locked in on her with his eyes. They were endless black voids, pinpricks of nothingness. She screamed and bolted for the door. The mirror man took 2 steps back. He charged and he slammed against the mirror. The cracks spread. They widened. The nails groaned in the wood. He slammed into it again, and the whole room shook this time. The girl found the mirror door, threw it open, and ran into the hallway. Everyone else quickly followed suit. Last to leave, Arthur pulled the door closed behind him. His hands were shaking so badly, the knob slipped out between his sweaty fingers.
Holy shit, that was
Yeah, it was. It felt real, didn't it?
You guys think that girl was a plant?
She had to have been.
how did they do those effects? Maybe it's rear projection. Hold on. Where is everyone?
The baby doll was waiting for them at the head of the stairs. But she was alone. The 3 young women weren't with her. "Come now," she said. "It's time to visit the surgeon's room. The others are off to see the butchers. We'll catch up with them in the basement." She opened the door directly behind her, and the boys followed her inside. The surgeon couldn't be here tonight in person, of course. I'm sure you understand. As she explained, the three of them gathered around the surgical table in the middle of the room. And they were all so aghast at what they saw before them that no one was really listening to her anymore. On a night like tonight, our dear doctor has many house calls to make. Instead, he asks you to finish what he started. Are any of you strong enough? No one answered. They were staring at a sweet little old lady that had been strapped down on this surgical table. She was completely still, aside from the rapid rise and fall of her chest. One of her eyes had been surgically removed very recently. Her cavernous socket yawned at them, open and wet, its smooth sides glistening. Behind the baby doll were shelves upon shelves of glass jars and cups and bowls of all shapes and sizes, each one holding a single human eye. There must have been 100 of them, all floating in a clear fluid, each wearing an optic nerve like a tail. The old lady looked up at the boys, pleading. Her lips trembled like she wanted to talk, but she couldn't, like she was paralyzed. And a single tear rolled from her single remaining eye. The baby doll pushed over a rolling tray, lined with rows of scalpels and forceps, and an empty glass jar. If one of you were to remove her other eye, the surgeon would be most grateful. He might even take you under his wing. He's always looking for bright young pupils. David snort-laughed at that, but quickly realized that she wasn't making a pun. The baby doll stared at them, waiting, as if she really thought that one of them was going to accept the offer and pick up a scalpel to cut out this old woman's eye. No one said anything. And then slowly, one by one, by one, by one, the other eyes began staring at them too. Twisting, rolling, turning in their jars, sliding through that clear viscous fluid so that each one of the eyeballs was looking right at them. "Fuck this," David said, and he went to the closest door. But it didn't lead back to the hallway. It led them to the butcher's. Like the other upstairs bedrooms, this one was fairly small and filled with stomach-churning horrors. The worst part of the room wasn't the macabre art adorning the walls, nor the spectacularly horrific centerpiece dangling from chains. It was the smell, the stink of meat turned to rot of blood scabbed over and devoured by hungry, wriggling maggots. The smell of death. Animals were on the walls, 2 by 2. Birds and squirrels and dogs and cats and bats and rats and snakes and possums and rabbits and voles and foxes, all gutted and bound together by their innards, strung up like ornaments. Their knotted entrails hung on roofing nails pounded into the walls. There were little crusty puddles under each of them, demonstrating how they had still been alive and suffering when they were mounted. And in the middle of it all, a man and a woman, bound face to face, dangling from chains in the ceiling. Wrists and ankles lashed together, a leather strap around their waists, keeping them in place. Just like the animals, their bellies had been slit open. Their small intestines had been pulled out and draped all around them, like tinsel on a Christmas tree. David felt a little lightheaded. Maybe it was the smell. The baby doll was gone. They were alone with the trophies of the bickering butchers.
How the fuck did they do all this?
I don't know, man. It's damn convincing. These practical effects are freaking...
These animals are not practical effects, dude.
Come on, they didn't kill these animals. That would break so many laws. Plus, it would take forever.
Fuck the animals, these people, though, I have to know.
Bro, don't touch them. Come on.
I have to fucking see how they did this. Just let me.
Oh, Jesus
Oh,
Christ!
my God.
It was not a practical effect. The man in chains, that man more inside out than outside in, was still alive. Arthur found the door, and they stumbled out into the hallway, where the baby doll was waiting for them, as was the long black veil and the woman with the split mouth. They all held surgical scalpels in their right hands, and none of them had left hands, just neat little exposed stumps. Arthur was out first, and he tried to stop, but David and Tommy were too spooked. They didn't see him trying to stop, so they pushed forward. The 3 bladed harpies set upon him, stabbing him repeatedly in the belly, the arms, in the meat of his chest. The blades were very short, very sharp, and they slid in and out lightning fast, bleeding him without killing him. Arthur staggered forward. He lost his balance, and the baby doll moved aside so that she could push him down the steps. And then the 3 of them went after David and Tommy. Tommy got his arm up and felt the scalpel slice through the muscle of his bicep. He threw his considerable weight towards the woman and knocked her down, and then he ran for the steps, but those steps were freshly slicked with the blood of his fallen friend. Tommy lost his footing and rolled to a heap on the first floor. "You're the last one," the woman with the split mouth said to David. He wished that he could fight, but he felt rooted to the ground. The women closed in around him. "Will you give us your hand?" the baby dolls said. One of them produced a hunting knife and dropped it at the floor by his feet. "Kneel," she commanded, and he knelt. "Your left hand, sacrifice it." He picked up the knife with his right. And then he swung it wildly at the women, backing them off, and he got to his feet and he ran. He breezed down those steps, leaping over the blood puddles, and made for the front door. But it was shut, and it was locked. And the hand collector was waiting there for him. He had removed his costume, and unlike the others, he had both hands, which were holding a very large axe. David turned to run, but the women were already there, and others, all in ghastly costume, all missing a left hand. They dragged David kicking and screaming down the steps into the basement, where his friends and the other guests were all waiting for him. All 15 of the other guests. Their blood soaked the dirt floor. They all looked dead, but based on the moans and the whimpers, some of them were still clinging to their final heartbeats in the darkness. Arthur and Tommy were kneeling down near the far wall, facing it. In front of them, at the base of that wall, was a pile of warm, freshly severed human hands. They put David on his knees at the end of the line. The hunting knife that he had so briefly held was now presented to the three of them. The man with the axe gently, reverently, set the blade down on top of that heap of hands. "Sacrifice one, or I take both." "Fuck you," Arthur snarled, through blood frothing in the corners of his lips. He'd lost a considerable amount, was barely able to stay upright. The other cultists held Tommy and David still, while their leader pushed Arthur onto his belly and then lopped off both of his hands. Arthur was unceremoniously dragged to the other side of the room and tossed into the corner, left to bleed out as the man placed the new hands on top of the heap. And it seemed that just for a second, like the wall flickered with life behind him. Not flickered like TV static, it was more like a long, slow ripple across the surface of a calm lake. David started to weep as Tommy was put on his belly. 1 stroke each, left and right, and Tommy's hands were added to the pile. He was dragged away crying. David was alone now. He knelt before the man with the axe. And he could hear it. He could hear that chorus of screams coming from the other side of the wall. It was so clear. He picked up the knife. He saw fingers twitching, little scraps of life left in those hands. He put the palm of his left hand flat on the floor, and he raised the knife high overhead. The wall rippled again, the screams crescendoed as he plunged down, stabbing into his wrist, snapping bones and slicing tendons. but he did not sever it. He could not cut it off. It dangled half-cut from the end of his wrist. He screamed, and the wall twisted and pulled away and opened up. He stabbed at his wrist again, hacking at it, cutting at it, drool pouring from the corners of his wailing mouth as his eyes dripped tears. And he chopped until his hand finally fell away from his body and hit the floor with a soft thud. The screams were silent now. The singing fallen still. And the basement wall was gone. Instead, David found himself looking across the beach of a horrible, dark island. He collapsed from pain, from blood loss, from shock. And then from the floor he watched as his left hand rolled over onto the palm and started to crawl towards the pile, scuttling like a fleshy crab. The other hands were all coming awake, crawling over the top of one another, fighting, thrashing, and throwing each other like hungry ants as they scrambled onto the ash-gray beach and towards the man that was waiting there for them. A tall and impossibly thin man, with arms shorn off at the shoulders, with broken nubs of bone jutting out through the open wounds and wiggling. The severed hands crawled to him, up him, swarming all over the hand collector, as David climbed up to his knees. He lowered his head to the blood-soaked sand, and he exalted his new lord and master. Thank you for listening to this twisted and gruesome Halloween episode of A Scary Home Companion. Although he's never named, the man dressed as the hand collector, the man running this haunted house, has been on the show once or twice before. Any idea who it may be? Go listen to the post-mortem episode analysis on Patreon and I'll tell you. For trivia and deep background on this episode and every episode, and hints on where the storyline may be going. Patreon is the best way to support A Scary Home Companion and help it evolve and spread its evil tendrils into the world at large. Interact with the show on social media, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, or email us directly at ascaryhomecompanion@gmail.com. Special thanks to the guest voices, Griffen Peters, Barrett Daniel, and Dan Lilly. The same hapless trio from Squatchman. Will we hear something else horrible happen to them again? Only time will tell. The episode was produced and edited by Jeff Davidson, with a little audio excellence from Mr. Dan Lilly. Music this episode was provided by Haunted House with White Rabbit, Superpoze with The Haunted House, Filmy Ghost with Haunted Cinema and Nightmare Reality, DS10 Dominator with The Backyard, Daniel Birch with His Eyes, They Were Gone. The Industrialism with The Machine Room, Michael Valentine West with The Summoning of the Butcher, Metek Zreen Toyz with Rising Terror, Pisces with Oh Lord, and Chelsea Oxendine with the theme music. I can't forget to thank Mike Koenig, who provided the string cheese fart. A Scary Home Companion is a proud member of the Imagineville Podcast Network.
You know